March 2026. Picture this, a private equity firm is staring down a $340 million acquisition. Due diligence is on. The team has gathered everything, and I mean everything: financials, contracts, market reports, technical assessments. 2,400 pages of material. In the old world, turning that mountain into an investment recommendation would mean 3 analysts disappearing for 2 weeks. Something like 80 hours of reading, 40 hours of analysis, 20 hours of writing. A whole lot of caffeine and a whole lot of late nights. This time, they feed the entire corpus into an AI system. 11 minutes later, it spits out a full investment memo. 28 pages. It flags 47 risk factors, maps them to the firm's investment criteria, and even compares the target to 340 similar deals from the last decade. Then it makes confidence-weighted recommendations and backs them up with evidence. Now, the memo isn't flawless. The humans still do real work. They spend about 6 hours tightening it up, adding context the model didn't pick up, challenging a few assumptions, and sharpening the story so it reads like something a partner would actually bet money on. But 6 hours is not 2 weeks. And because of that, the team reviews roughly triple the opportunities that quarter. Here's the part that should make you sit up: the system didn't just fetch information. It didn't just summarize. It reasoned. It synthesized. It made an argument. It anticipated pushback and tried to answer it. It recommended, and it defended the recommendation. That's not business intelligence the way we've known it. That's a different kind of capability. Last season, we spent 13 episodes living in that gap between data and intelligence. Why companies drown in dashboards but still starve for real insight. We talked about decision architecture, outcome tracking, intelligence maturity. All of that still matters. And yet, the ground has moved. Generative AI didn't just speed up analytics. It introduced something new: machines that don't only compute, they can reason within domains, systems that don't only retrieve, they can synthesize, tools that don't only present, they can recommend. So yes, it changes everything we discussed last season. And in a strange way, it changes nothing. The principles stay. The way you implement them gets rewritten. This is Season 2 of The Intelligence Edge. We're starting where we have to start, the inflection point itself. I'm Nakel Nakima. Welcome. Alright, for Season 2 we're bringing back a panel that's been watching this transformation up close. Some organizations are navigating the shift brilliantly. Some are stepping on every rake in the yard. Most are somewhere in the messy middle. Dr. Lian Zhou is an AI transformation advisor working across Asia-Pacific, right where a lot of the most aggressive adoption is happening. Lian, welcome back.
Thanks, Nakel. It really has been one of those years where you look up and realize the playbook changed while you were still holding the old one.
Maria Alvarez is a data governance leader who's been building guardrails that actually let organizations move, instead of freezing them in place. Maria, good to have you.
Great to be here. And yes, governance has become both more necessary and, honestly, more complicated than most teams expected.
Jonas Richter is a data ethics and compliance specialist focused on what happens when AI systems start shaping high-stakes judgment calls. Jonas, welcome.
Thanks, Nakel. The moment the machine starts reasoning, the ethical questions stop being theoretical very quickly.
And Kwame Mensah is an intelligence systems architect. He's not patching AI onto legacy BI stacks, he's building AI-native intelligence systems from first principles. Kwame, great to have you back.
Good to be back. And I'll just say it, the architecture really is different now. Not a little different. Fundamentally different.
So let's do the big question first. What is actually different about generative AI in decision intelligence? Lian, if you had to describe the shift, how would you frame it?
I'd break it into 3 changes that really separate this from earlier waves of analytics. First, we moved from retrieval to reasoning. Traditional BI was basically, pull the data, show the chart. Even advanced analytics mostly did pattern detection and prediction. But the leap from, here are the facts, to, here's what it means and what you should do, was still human territory. Generative AI can do a real version of that synthesis. It can weigh evidence, compare alternatives, draft recommendations, and even make the case for them. It's not general intelligence. It's bounded, domain-shaped reasoning. But it's reasoning. Second, we moved from structured only to unstructured first. Most organizational knowledge doesn't live in tidy rows and columns. It's in contracts, memos, emails, meeting notes, call transcripts. The stuff people actually use to decide. Now the machine can read that. That's why your cold open matters. Those 2,400 pages weren't a database table. They were human artifacts. Third, we moved from batch outputs to conversational interaction. BI produces reports and dashboards, and users consume them. You might filter, you might drill down, but it's still basically one way. With generative AI, the intelligence becomes something you can interrogate. You can ask, why this? What if we change the assumption? Where are you uncertain? That changes the relationship. It's not user to tool, it starts to look like collaborator to collaborator.
That last piece is huge. Because it sounds small, like, oh, it's chat. But it's not just chat, it's iterative reasoning. Kwame, from an architecture standpoint, what does that shift do to the stack?
It pushes AI up the stack into places where, historically, only humans operated. Last season we talked about that capability stack: data foundation, analytics, decision integration, outcome learning, strategic alignment. AI used to sit mostly in the analytics layer. Now it reaches into decision integration, because it isn't just producing a score, it's producing a recommendation you can act on. And it touches outcome learning too, because once the machine is participating in decisions, you have to measure how those AI-assisted decisions perform over time. Technically, there's another big shift: retrieval and reasoning used to be separate steps. Retrieval could be automated, reasoning was human. Now, systems combine them. Retrieval-augmented generation is a classic pattern: you fetch relevant context and the model reasons over it in the same flow. That collapses what used to be a long chain of work into a tighter loop. And one more thing people underestimate: for certain synthesis tasks, the working database becomes the model's context window, not the data warehouse. That doesn't replace warehouses for structured analytics, but it adds a whole second paradigm you have to build for.
Maria, you're hearing all this and thinking, cool, now govern it. What changes when the output isn't deterministic and the system is effectively making arguments?
Governance has to expand in at least 3 directions. 1. We have to govern the reasoning, not just the data. Data governance taught us to ask, is the data accurate? Who can access it? What's the lineage? Those questions still matter. But now we also have to ask, is the recommendation defensible? Did it hallucinate? Can we detect contradictions? How do we validate the logic when the same prompt might yield slightly different outputs? 2. We have to govern the human-AI interaction. If the AI and the human are collaborating, governance can't stop at the system boundary. It has to address which decisions the AI can influence, where a human must review, how that review is documented, what happens when a person overrides, and what triggers escalation. And 3. Governance has to move at AI speed. A 2-week compliance workflow can't meaningfully supervise a system producing recommendations in 2 minutes. So you need embedded controls, not just after-the-fact approvals.
Jonas, the ethical side. When the machine is reasoning, what intensifies?
3 things hit immediately. First, accountability gets foggy. If a human used to retrieve information and then decide, it was obvious who owned the decision. But when an AI system recommends and the human follows that recommendation most of the time, responsibility becomes shared in a way we haven't really formalized. Second, transparency becomes harder. These models aren't fully interpretable. You can often show the evidence they used, but the why isn't always clean. In high-stakes contexts, that opacity isn't just inconvenient, it can become ethically unacceptable. Third, human agency erodes if we're not careful. When a system is fast and frequently correct, people drift into deference. They become approvers. That automation bias is a direct threat to meaningful oversight.
Alright. So we've named what's different. Let's get more concrete. What does generative AI enable that wasn't really possible before? Lien, map the new capability landscape for us.
I see 5 capability buckets. 1. Synthesis at scale. Humans can synthesize, but we hit a cognitive ceiling fast. 5 reports, sure. 50 reports, not really. AI can compress huge volumes of material into coherent summaries, comparisons, and draft recommendations. It doesn't eliminate human synthesis, it shifts humans up a level. You synthesize the synthesis. 2. Pattern recognition across modalities. Traditional analytics mostly looked for patterns in structured data. Now you can connect text to numbers to images to audio. Like connecting complaint narratives to shipping route data. That's a different kind of insight. 3. A natural language interface to basically everything. Instead of needing SQL or a BI tool skill set, you ask plain language questions. That massively broadens who can access analytical capability. 4. Scenario generation and lightweight simulation. Not prediction exactly. More like structured imagination. What might happen if we enter this market? How could a competitor respond? It expands the space of hypotheses humans consider. And 5. Drafting and iterative refinement. The AI produces a first draft of memos, strategy documents, summaries. Humans shift from writing from scratch to editing, challenging, and improving. For many teams, that changes speed and quality immediately.
Kwame, take those 5 and translate them into what you actually have to build. Because people listening might be thinking, okay, so we turn on an AI feature. And it's not that simple.
Yeah, turn on the AI feature is how you get a demo, not a dependable system. Synthesis at scale usually means retrieval-augmented generation. You need to ingest documents, break them into chunks, create embeddings, store them in a vector database, retrieve relevant passages at query time, and then have the model synthesize with those passages as grounded context. For cross-modality patterns, you either use multimodal models or you orchestrate pipelines where different models process different data types and you merge the outputs. Pipelines can be more controllable, and right now controllability matters a lot. Natural language interfaces often mean text-to-SQL or text-to-API translation plus a semantic layer that understands your domain. And then you need guardrails, permissioning that still works in natural language, query validation, auditing, and checks so the system doesn't confidently return nonsense. Scenario generation is about diversity and structure. You don't want one generic scenario, you want a range. So you use prompting patterns, structured outputs, multiple samples, temperature variation, and then you often need a way to rank or cluster scenarios. And drafting plus iteration requires state management and workflows. The human has to be able to give feedback, refine, approve, reject. This is where human in the loop isn't a slogan, it's actual product design.
Maria, if those are the capabilities, how do you govern them without crushing momentum? Because that's the tension people keep living in.
You govern by matching the control to the capability, instead of using one blunt governance template for everything. For synthesis, you can't verify every sentence manually. So you require citations, you enforce that the model shows its sources, you do sampling-based checks, you ask for confidence indicators, and you use contradiction detection when sources disagree. For cross-modal insights, you need quality checks on each modality before you fuse them, and you should require domain expert validation when the insight is going to drive a high-impact change. For natural language access, you keep access controls intact through the conversational layer. Just because someone can ask in plain English doesn't mean they should be able to retrieve everything. So, role-based access, audits, monitoring, semantic guardrails to block sensitive categories of queries. For scenario generation, labels matter. You have to prevent people from treating generated scenarios like forecasts. You mandate that scenarios are clearly identified as generated, you communicate uncertainty, and where possible you calibrate probabilities carefully so you aren't creating false precision. And for drafting, the biggest trap is rubber stamp review. So you design the workflow so human review is visible and meaningful. Track changes. Require review checklists for certain classes of outputs. Train people on how to critique AI work, not just accept it.
Jonas, if you had to give ethical principles that should sit behind all this, what are they?
5 principles. 1. Be transparent that AI was involved. People don't need every technical detail, but AI-assisted should not be hidden. 2. Keep humans accountable. AI can inform decisions, but it cannot become a scapegoat. 3. Insist on meaningful human review where review is required. That means time, context, authority, and the ability to override. 4. Constant bias vigilance. These systems can inherit and amplify bias. You monitor continuously, especially where human lives and livelihoods are affected. And 5. Proportionality. Match AI power to the stakes. Don't use heavy AI where it adds no value, and don't use it in high-stakes settings without serious oversight.
Okay, now a twist. Let's talk about what stays the same. Because it's easy to get hypnotized by new capability and forget that fundamentals still decide whether any of this works. Lien, what principles from Season 1 still hold, even now?
The core framework is still right. AI changes the mechanics, not the logic. That hierarchy still exists. Data becomes information, information becomes insight, insight becomes intelligence, intelligence becomes decision. AI can move you faster through the hierarchy, but it can't erase it. If your data foundation is weak, the AI will reason over weak material. If your insight synthesis is messy, the AI will produce messy conclusions with clean wording. And the decision layer is still the bottleneck. It doesn't matter how smart the recommendation is if it doesn't reach the right person at the right time in a form they can use. Honestly, AI makes decision architecture even more important. Because if the machine can generate recommendations non-stop, you'll drown in machine-generated insight unless your system filters, routes, and prioritizes. And the concept of intelligence debt still compounds. AI can reduce it by speeding insight. But it can also increase it if you spend months building AI while decisions keep waiting. The goal isn't adopt AI fastest. The goal is reduce intelligence debt fastest. Those aren't always the same.
Maria, what about governance? What doesn't change?
A lot of governance is technology agnostic, and that's the point. Authoritative definitions still matter. If customer means 5 different things in 5 places, the AI will happily synthesize that ambiguity into confident prose. It doesn't fix conceptual inconsistency, it amplifies it. Quality at the source matters even more. Garbage in, garbage out becomes more dangerous because the model can make garbage sound persuasive. And accountability has to be assigned explicitly. AI encourages hand-waving, like, well, the model did it. That's governance failure. For every AI-assisted decision flow, someone must own system behavior, review responsibility, and outcome accountability. Also, audit trails. Because outputs aren't deterministic, you need logs of inputs, retrieved context, outputs, and decision history. Otherwise you can't reconstruct what happened when something goes wrong.
Kwame, enduring architecture principles.
The stack still matters. AI doesn't replace the need for data foundation, analytics, decision integration, outcome learning, strategic alignment. It extends them. If you try to deploy AI without a solid foundation, you get brittle systems. If you have no decision integration, you get great recommendations that nobody uses. Outcome tracking becomes even more important now. AI recommendations must be tested against reality. You need feedback loops. You need to monitor drift. You need to see when performance degrades and why. And integration is still the hard part. The last mile problem didn't go away. AI can generate brilliance at the center, but if it doesn't land inside real workflows and operational systems, it's just a fancy sidecar.
Jonas, ethically, what remains constant?
The foundations don't change. Human dignity stays central, especially in decisions around jobs, credit, healthcare, justice. AI doesn't reduce that obligation. It increases urgency because decisions can now scale faster. Transparency remains mandatory. If AI can't support an adequate explanation, then maybe that decision shouldn't be AI-assisted. Fairness is non-negotiable. Accountability is essential. And if AI complicates those, the answer isn't to give up on them. It's to design harder and govern better.
Let's go from principles to reality. How are organizations actually transforming to leverage this? Lien, what are you seeing in the field?
I tend to see 3 stages. Not everyone moves cleanly, but the pattern is consistent. Stage 1 is augmentation. AI helps people do what they already do. Analysts research faster, managers get summaries, teams draft documents quicker. Org charts stay the same. It's safer. Gains are real, but mostly incremental. That's where most organizations are. Stage 2 is reconfiguration. Workflows start changing. Tasks move between roles. Some specialist work is automated, pushing specialists into higher-level work, or in some cases eliminating parts of those roles. New roles show up too: AI trainers, workflow designers, people who maintain prompt libraries, model operations. Stage 3 is reinvention. That's where the organization is designed around human-AI collaboration from the start. Smaller teams do work that used to require large departments. New services appear. Operating models change. Very few companies are here, but the ones who are, you can feel the competitive advantage.
Kwame, what does AI native look like when you're actually building systems?
AI infrastructure becomes first class, not a bolt-on. You have platforms for model management, orchestration, evaluation, prompt libraries, access control, observability. It sits alongside databases and networks as core infrastructure. Second, human AI workflows are designed deliberately. Where does the AI generate? Where does the human review? What gets logged? What triggers escalation? In AI-native organizations, those aren't informal habits, they're documented processes you improve over time. Third, knowledge capture becomes continuous. Every interaction can be feedback that improves retrieval, improves prompts, improves evaluation sets, improves the knowledge graph. That requires systems that can actually collect and use feedback safely. And measurement changes. You start measuring both human and AI contribution. Where did time compress? Where did quality improve? Where did collaboration break? Where did the model mislead people?
Maria, governance in an AI-native organization sounds like a different job. What does it require?
It becomes continuous and embedded. Traditional governance often reviewed outputs after the fact. But AI is too fast. So you embed governance into the system, access constraints, filtering, pre-release checks, continuous monitoring. Role governance has to be explicit too. A human reviewer can't be a vague concept. What exactly are they reviewing? What do they have authority to stop? What are they accountable for? Ambiguity creates accountability gaps. Model governance becomes operations, not a one-time sign-off. You need evaluation, testing, versioning, deprecation, rollback. It's an ongoing life cycle. And because these systems cross functions, governance can't be siloed. The same AI layer might support finance and marketing and operations. So you need cross-functional governance, councils, centers of excellence, enterprise offices that can set consistent rules.
Jonas, what human implications are showing up once the organization goes AI native?
Skills shift rapidly, and that creates ethical obligations. If roles change faster than people can adapt, the organization has a responsibility to support transition through training and fair treatment. The ethical failure mode is treating humans like replaceable parts. Then there's autonomy and meaning. If the human role becomes monitor the machine and approve, a lot of people will find the work less meaningful. That affects well-being and engagement. Designing human roles for meaning is not sentimental. It's operationally important. Another concern is surveillance. AI-native workflows can record everything. Prompts, edits, time spent, decisions made. That can improve systems, but it can also become monitoring that punishes people. Ethical boundaries need to be explicit, and power concentrates. Whoever controls AI platforms can gain disproportionate influence inside an organization. Governance has to pay attention to power dynamics, not just technical risk.
Let's switch to the listener who's in the middle of this right now, trying to navigate. What's the pathway from "we're experimenting" to "we're doing this responsibly and at scale"?
I use a 5-phase framework. Phase 1, assess foundations. Before you spend heavily, check readiness. Is your data foundation usable? Is decision architecture clear? Do you track outcomes? AI accelerates what exists. If what exists is chaos, AI accelerates chaos. Phase 2, prioritize use cases. Not everything benefits equally. Choose based on decision importance, current pain, AI fit, and feasibility. You want early wins that teach the organization, not moonshots that stall. Phase 3, controlled experimentation. Pilot in a bounded area. Measure speed, quality, adoption, and unintended consequences. The big misstep is scaling too early, before you understand failure modes. Phase 4, redesign workflows. You don't just insert AI into a process, you rework the process around collaboration. And you involve the people who actually do the work. Top-down workflow design without frontline input tends to collapse. Phase 5, continuous evolution. This is not a project with an end date. The models change, the risks change, the org changes. You need a continuous learning loop.
Kwame, what technical decisions make or break this transition?
A few choices have outsized impact. First, build versus buy versus configure. Build gives control but demands deep capability. Buy gives speed but creates dependency. Configure can integrate quickly but may limit differentiation. Most organizations should configure where they can, buy where they must, and build only where it creates real competitive advantage. Second, model selection. Frontier models are powerful but expensive and complex. Smaller models are cheaper and faster and often good enough. Match model to the task instead of defaulting to the biggest option. Third, integration architecture. Loose integration gets you fast pilots but shallow capability. Deep integration unlocks value but costs more. Decide intentionally, don't let your pilot accidentally become your long-term architecture. And fourth, AI data architecture. AI needs semantic search, vector indexes, context management. Traditional data infrastructure may not cover that. You have to assess and extend it rather than assuming you're ready because you have a warehouse.
Maria, what governance structures help organizations move quickly without breaking things?
3 structures matter a lot. 1. An AI governance council that's cross-functional. Business, tech, legal, ethics, operations. Without that, rules fragment across departments and you get inconsistent risk tolerance. 2. A use case approval process that's structured. Evaluate value, risk, data needs, governance implications, ethical considerations. That prevents both reckless rollouts and analysis paralysis. 3. A monitoring and response framework. Not just we monitor, but clear triggers and actions. What sets off an investigation? What suspends a system? Who decides? AI can fail quietly at scale, so response has to be defined ahead of time.
Jonas, ethical guardrails. If an executive asked you, what do we need in place before we scale, what would you say?
5 guardrails. 1. A high-stakes decision list. Identify decisions where AI needs heightened scrutiny, like employment, credit, healthcare, safety, civil rights. Require strong oversight and documentation there. 2. Explanation requirements. Define when explanations are needed for who and at what level. Make it mandatory rather than something you scramble for after a complaint. 3. Real override authority. Not symbolic. Who can override AI under what conditions with what documentation? If nobody can realistically override it, you don't have human agency. 4. Bias monitoring protocols with metrics and thresholds. If bias is detected, what happens next? You need a playbook. And 5. Human impact assessments. Before deploying AI that reshapes jobs, assess what changes, what support exists, and how displacement is handled. Make it explicit.
We're coming up on the end, so let's do our tactical edge segment. Concrete actions someone listening can take this week. Lien, start us off.
Pick 3 repeatable decisions your organization makes where AI-assisted synthesis would help. For each one, write down what information needs to be synthesized, where it lives, and what output would genuinely help the decision maker. That keeps AI exploration anchored to decision value, not novelty.
Maria.
Write a one-page AI governance policy, even if you think you're still early. Include what approvals are required before deploying AI, what documentation is mandatory, who reviews AI-assisted decisions, and how escalation works when something goes wrong. If you wait to write this until after rollout, you'll accumulate governance debt fast.
Jonas.
Make your high-stakes decision list. For each decision, note why it's high stakes, what human oversight would be required, and what failure could look like. That list becomes the backbone of proportional governance.
Kwame, bring us home.
Do a quick AI readiness audit of your data architecture focused on documents. Can your key documents be indexed? Can you perform semantic retrieval? Can you pull the right context reliably for reasoning? Identify the gaps. That foundation work determines whether your AI system is grounded or just guessing elegantly.
Let's close this opening episode of Season 2 by naming what we've really said today. Generative AI has changed what machine intelligence can do. It can synthesize, recommend, and interact in a conversational loop. The implementation landscape is different now. But the foundational principles still stand. The ladder from data to decision, the necessity of a real decision layer, the importance of tracking outcomes, and the role of governance as an enabler rather than a blocker. Over the next episodes, we're going to get specific. We'll talk about the Chief AI Officer role that's emerging to lead this transformation. We'll look at governance frameworks that speed up responsible deployment instead of slowing everything down. We'll unpack human-AI collaboration patterns that preserve agency while still capturing speed and scale. We'll also go into domains, finance, operations, strategy, customer intelligence. And yes, we'll go straight at the risks, hallucinations, bias, overdependence, displacement. We'll build maturity models for AI-native intelligence so leaders can see where they are and what comes next. That memo that wrote itself in the cold open isn't the end of human judgment. It's the start of augmented judgment, humans and machines reasoning together, each bringing different strengths. The question isn't whether AI will reshape decision intelligence. The question is whether your organization will lead that reshaping, or get reshaped by competitors who do. Dr. Lien Zhou, Maria Alvarez, Jonas Richter, Kwame Mensah, thanks for helping us launch Season 2.
Thank you, Nakel. And yes, it's not slowing down.
Thanks. I'm excited for what we'll cover this season. And also relieved we're talking about governance in a practical way.
Thanks, Nakel. A lot of organizations are making decisions right now that will define their ethical posture for years.
Appreciate it. Let's help people build systems that actually work in the real world.
And to everyone listening, welcome to Season 2 of The Intelligence Edge. Next week, we're diving into a role that's suddenly on everybody's org chart drafts, the Chief AI Officer, and what it means to lead a machine learning organization. Until then, I'm Nakel Nakima. Make better decisions.